Hi, I'm Stassi Schroeder. On my podcast, I share candid updates from my personal life, chat with some of my best friends about what's going on in our lives, give commentary on the latest pop culture headlines, and sometimes deep dive into random topics I'm obsessed with, like human design. It's a bit all over the place, but that's how I like it. And you will too. Listen to my podcast, Stassi, wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 392 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great.
Yeah.
You and I are taping right before Thanksgiving.
We are.
So by the time, this episode comes out, Thanksgiving will have come and gone. So hopefully everybody had a good one for those of you who celebrate it. And
I'll be 5 pounds heavier.
yeah, and Christmas will be right around the corner.
Oh, man, it will soon.
Yeah, very soon. Let's go ahead and give our shout outs. For Patreon, we had Nicole Tregenza,
Hey, Tregenza.
Bob Brawley,
What's going on, Brawley?
Danette,
Hey, Danette.
Jason LaRue,
Well, thanks, LaRue.
Selena Barton,
Hey, Barton.
Rebecca Joe jumped out at our highest level,
Oh, thanks, Joe.
Dave,
Hey, good old Dave.
Cynthia Lee,
Hey, there's Lee.
Chief,
Chief.
and last but not least, Ranger Gal.
Well, if you're going to be a gal, be a ranger gal.
All right, I like that. And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Les.
Hey, Les.
So we appreciate the new support, the continued support. We also had a couple of great PayPal donations from Garland Amick
Thanks, Amick.
and Kim Van Giel.
Thank you so much, Van Giel.
Yeah, thank you to everyone who supports the show. We have quite a bit out right now, Gibbs. We have a new True Crime All the Time episode where we're tackling the Gitche Manitou murders. And this is a pretty well-known case that goes back to 1973. 5 teens go to this kind of state park to hang out, play guitar, and they're met by 3 armed men. And only one of the teens survives the night.
Very interesting case.
It is. It is. So make sure you check that out. We also on Saturday dropped a new Patreon episode on Donna Scrivo, a registered nurse who was the legal guardian of her adult son who struggled with mental illness. She reported him missing, and then days later, his dismembered remains were found on the side of the road.
She has issues.
Well, it's a very dark case. The details are pretty dark, no doubt about it. All right, buddy, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I am ready.
We're talking about the disappearance of Brandon Lawson. Brandon Lawson was a young man from San Angelo, Texas, who disappeared in August 2013 on a remote highway in Coke County, Texas. Over a decade later, the suspicious circumstances surrounding his disappearance remain unresolved. Brandon Lawson was born on November 8th, 1986. He was 26 years old at the time of his disappearance. Brandon had been in a relationship with a woman named Ladessa Lofton for 10 years. They had 3 children together, and she was a stepmother to Brandon's oldest daughter.
So they've been together since he was 16.
Yeah, a long time. Brandon and Ladessa met during high school. She was a sophomore and he was a junior. Brandon approached her in the hallway and asked if she knew who he was. She said, "No, am I supposed to?" Brandon then asked for her number. Ladessa told the San Angelo Standard-Times that Brandon caught her attention because of his laugh, his personality, and his blue eyes. The couple enjoyed watching movies, camping, and fishing together. They shared a home in San Angelo, Texas. That sounds like a Gibby pickup line to me.
You like that?
Do you know who I am?
Do you know who I am?
But I love the answer, which is no. Am I supposed to? Which is probably the answer you would get 99.9% of the time.
If I ever would ask that question, I'm sure that's what I would get.
Or no, and I don't care to. Ledessa said, we weren't the perfect couple. We grew up together. We were babies, but we were happy. We loved each other. And, I think that's pretty rare, right? To start a relationship that young and for it to continue for that long. Some people, marry as high school sweethearts, but
they do.
I don't think it's the norm.
No. You met your wife after high school, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, way after. Well after high school.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, by and large, most of your high school relationships don't last very long.
They don't. You don't know that at the time. You think they're going to be forever.
Well, sure you do. But most of them are not. Many people who speak about Brandon describe him as a kind and caring person. But he did have problems. Brandon struggled with addiction and had served some time in prison. Around 10:45 p.m. on August 8th, 2013, Brandon briefly returned to the home he shared with Ledessa after not coming home the previous night. Ledessa was angry over his absence and believed Brandon was using drugs again. The two got into a heated argument, and Brandon left the house after Ledessa told him to get out.
Look, it's never going to be easy to come home the next night if you didn't show up the night before.
No.
Not going to go well.
I can't even imagine what my wife would say if one night I never came home and didn't call, and then I just showed up the next night and was like, hey, what's for dinner? That's
if that ever happens, please let me know. I want to be here in the corner just to watch the activities.
Oh, it's not going to go well. I can tell you that. In a 2018 interview, Ledessa said the fight was the result of multiple factors. They were stressed because Brandon had been working over 60 hours a week, and their youngest son was only a few months old. She regrets some of the things she said during that fight. So there's a couple of things there. First of all, 60 hours a week's a lot.
It is.
You and I have both probably worked those quite a bit during our lifetime, but those are rough weeks, especially if they continue for a long period of time. And then you factor in a newborn, and, everyone who's had a child knows what newborns are like.
It can be stressful.
Very stressful. Constant attention, waking up at odd hours.
And if your husband's working 60 hours plus commuting, he's not going to be there as much as you would like to help out with that newborn.
Well, especially if he doesn't show up one night.
Well, there you go.
And I think that's going to add to the anger.
Yeah. But who hasn't said things that they really didn't mean during a fight and you regret it, probably as it's coming out of your mouth?
Yeah, almost instantly.
Yeah, but for sure the next day you're like, why did I say that?
And once you've had time to cool down, you think about what you said. Yeah, I think we've all been there.
Yeah.
I mean, I've said some things to you that I have instantly regretted.
Just an hour ago.
Some things I don't regret, but some things I do. But then there's also this thought by Ledessa that Brandon is using drugs again. And that's a tough one, right? If you have someone who's struggling with addiction, and let's say they're clean
right
for a period of time, and then all of a sudden they don't show up one night and you think they've, started using again, that's going to be tough.
Yeah. I mean, you already go into a relationship like that with trust issues, right? When you have somebody that has a problem with addiction, are they off? Are they on again? How can I believe them? This him skipping the night out didn't help.
Brandon's brother, Kyle, later confirmed Brandon used meth before he disappeared. Again, we mentioned it. He had ongoing substance abuse problems, but had been sober for around 6 months before this. On the day of his disappearance, Brandon told Kyle that Ledessa had people from their neighborhood after him. Okay, well, let's examine that for a minute. Brandon told his brother that Ledessa had people from their neighborhood after him. What does after him mean? To hurt him? To help him? to make sure he was okay?
Yeah. What does it really, I mean, we don't know.
Now, Ledessa has said she has no idea why Brandon would say this, and Kyle believes Brandon was just being paranoid.
Which drugs can cause you to be.
Yeah, some absolutely can. Around 11:30 p.m., Brandon called his father and said he was heading to his parents' house in Crowley, which is 3 hours from San Angelo. Around 12:30 a.m. on August 9th, Brandon called his brother Kyle and asked for help because he ran out of gas. Brandon's last known location was along U.S. Highway 277 north of San Angelo and just before Bronte, a town with a population of less than 1,000 people. So a pretty small town.
It's really small.
One officer described Highway 277 as a desolate 2-lane highway. Someone could probably lie down in the middle of the road and not worry about being run over.
That says a lot.
It does say a lot. I mean, you know, Texas has a lot of highways. Texas is a big place.
It is.
And it has a lot of remote areas. You know, you think about Texas with a huge population, which it has, but it's so big that it has some pretty desolate areas.
Yeah.
But being able to lay down in the middle of the road and not worry about being run over. I mean, I know he's being hyperbolic, but
It's really saying something.
it is. According to the San Angelo Standard Times, Brandon told his brother, 3, and he used expletives, are chasing me out of town. Now, the expletives were omitted, obviously, in the newspaper. Brandon then said it was the Mexicans in the neighborhood. Kyle asked him if he was tripping, but Brandon said he wasn't. So, you know, at first he says Ledessa has people after him. Now he says 3 people, I'm not sure what the expletives are chasing him out of town.
Yeah.
So he has a thought in his head that people are after him. Kyle lived less than a mile from Brandon, so he stopped at Brandon's house to pick up a gas can. He took his wife and son with him to find his brother. Kyle and Brandon continued making calls to one another. But according to Kyle, Brandon wouldn't stay on the phone with him for long. He would only say 1 or 2 sentences before hanging up.
Which is strange.
Yeah, it's very strange. I mean, you're having a conversation and then all of a sudden the person is hanging up on you. And this is the person that wants you to help them by getting a gas can and getting some gas for them.
Yeah. I'm taking my wife and my kid to come help you, and you can't stay on the phone with me, but for a couple minutes.
So a lot of these things, right? Some of the things he's saying, the way he's acting might lead you to believe that Brandon was on something that night. It's possible. Brandon called 911 at 12:50 a.m. At the time, 911 rang at a local nursing home in Robert Lee. So we're going to play the 911 call. And I actually found a really nice edited version of it on YouTube by a guy named Matt Wilson. So shout out to his channel.
Yes, I'm in the middle of the field. It's like we're just pushing guys over. Right here going towards Javelin on both sides. My truck ran out of gas. There's one car here. You got to take the pictures to the woods. 3:30. And when I talk to him, I show you in his home. That's the first guy. You need an ambulance? Yeah. No, I need the cops.
So no doubt, Gibbs, the 911 call is difficult to understand. What makes it easier is the way that this Matt Wilson guy edited it. He basically took out the operator's voice, the dispatcher, or whoever was at the Robert Lee nursing home, which was also strange that the 911 call, sir, answered at a nursing home.
It's very strange.
But he took her voice out, which made it a little bit easier to understand. But according to NBC5 Dallas, Brandon told the 911 operator, yes, I'm in the middle of a field, push some guys over, right here going toward Abilene on both sides. My truck ran out of gas. There's one car here. The guy's chasing, and it's kind of inaudible, to the woods, please hurry. He also said, we're not talking to him. I told you I ran into him. That's the first guy. So, all of that's kind of strange. It doesn't make a lot of sense. When the dispatcher asked if Brandon needed an ambulance, he said, no, I need the cops. Now, some people who listen to the call believe that they can hear gunshots in the background. And you do hear something.
You do.
That sounds like it could be gunshots. However, Kyle Lawson has said he thinks it's the noise of cars driving on the bridge over the Colorado River. Whatever the case is, it's a very strange 911 call. And, let's dissect some of it. Push some guys over. Okay. Don't know what that means. Going toward Abilene on both sides. I don't know what that means.
I don't either.
And at one point he says, we're not talking to him. Well, who's him? So again, is this someone who is under the influence and therefore, some of the things that he's saying are not making the most sense that, possible? Or is this someone being chased through the woods and being fired at? And
potentially, we don't know though, right? I mean, I'd actually have to be on the ground and where they think he was when he made the call and say, okay, drive over the bridge. Let me see if that sounds like
right.
that.
Now, the one thing that I do think is strange is that he doesn't say that people are firing at him.
Right.
You would think if those were gunshots, he would say, hey, these people are shooting at me. But he doesn't say that. The following timeline of events was published by the San Angelo Standard-Times. At 12:51 a.m., Kyle called Brandon and left a voicemail. At the same time, Brandon called Ladessa Lofton, but she didn't answer. Ladessa didn't have a wall charger at this time, so she was charging her phone in her vehicle while she slept. At 12:52, Kyle Lawson's wife called Brandon twice. At 12:54, Kyle called Brandon. At 12:57, Brandon called his neighbor. At 12:58, Brandon called Kyle twice. Also at 12:58, the neighbor called 3 times. So there are a lot of phone calls, and there are still more to come.
Yeah.
But this is a lot of phone calls in a very short period of time. At 12:59, Kyle called Brandon. At 1:04 a.m., the 911 dispatcher called Brandon back to try to get more information about his location and what was going on. He didn't answer, so she left a voicemail and also called him a second time. At 1:09 a.m., Brandon called Kyle 3 times. At 1:12, Kyle called Brandon 3 times. At 1:15, Brandon called Kyle twice. These were the last calls he made from his phone. At 1:19 a.m., all calls to Brandon's phone started going straight to voicemail. In one of these short calls, Brandon told Kyle he was running through a field and bleeding. Kyle thought he tripped over some rocks or had a minor accident. Brandon didn't tell him about any attack and didn't say that anyone else was with him that night. Shortly before 1 a.m., a trucker along US 277 called 911 to report that a truck was obstructing traffic. This was Brandon's truck, abandoned on the highway. Coke County Chief Deputy Brandon Neal arrived at the scene shortly after 1 a.m. Kyle Lawson arrived at the same time as the deputy. Chief Deputy Neal didn't think the 911 call was unusual. There is about 30 miles between the last gas station in San Angelo and the town of Bronte. He had responded to multiple calls from people who ran out of gas along US 277. Kyle was on the phone with Brandon when he arrived. Kyle told the officer the truck belonged to his brother. He said Brandon was walking somewhere on the road, but his phone kept losing reception. He left out the fact that Brandon said he was nearby.
Are you feeling stuck in your career or lacking employment at the moment? Experiencing symptoms of job dissatisfaction? You might be suffering from a common condition known as career stagnation. But don't worry, there's a solution. Monster.com. Monster.com offers a comprehensive suite of career-boosting tools designed just for you. Our free resume review and AI interview prep tool will help you stand out from the crowd. Need more guidance? Dive into our career advice articles for expert tips and insights. And don't forget to check out our salary tools to ensure you're getting paid what you're worth. Side effects may include a new job, increased confidence, and a brighter future. Consult Monster.com today and take the first step towards your new career. Ready for your next job opportunity? Visit Monster.com now.
When Kyle arrived, Brandon told him per the San Angelo Standard Times, "I can see you. I'm right here." But Kyle couldn't see him anywhere. Brandon said to Kyle, "One time run," which was code for law enforcement run. Kyle said he wasn't going to run. Brandon said, "Where is your pride, MFer?" and hung up on him. So, I mean, we've got to dissect some of this. I said a lot of calls in a short period of time.
I have anxiety.
Just thinking about that many phone calls back and forth. Oh, well, me too. I don't make that many phone calls in a month.
That's a lot of phone calls in a half an hour time frame. You know, people call in. And I can only imagine being like the neighbor getting a call, thinking, what the hell's going on? I got to call him back. Is he okay? And then while you're calling him, Kyle's calling his brother, Brandon's calling, you know, the neighbor or his brother back, and everybody's just going back and forth, getting bits and pieces.
And nobody really knows what's going on.
Yeah.
Now, we did say that, you know, his brother said he kept hanging up on him. Was it because he was having problem with service? Because we just talked about that. That could have been the reason for so many phone calls. But then, you know, you have this situation where Kyle does get there, but there's a police officer there. And Brandon says that he can actually see him. He says, "I'm right here. I can see you."
Yeah.
But Kyle doesn't see him anywhere. And then does Brandon get, you know, scared because there's a police officer there because he tells his brother to run?
I think he did. I think he was scared.
At the time of his disappearance, Brandon had an active warrant out of Johnson County for possession with intent to deliver. Kyle assumed he was hiding to avoid getting in trouble with the police. Kyle didn't think Brandon was in danger. Neither he nor the deputy were aware of Brandon's 911 call at this time. And that probably explains the deputy's lack of urgency. You know, he's saying, "Oh, we get these calls all the time about people running out of gas." Well, the 911 call does not denote, "Hey, I just ran out of gas." It's, "Hey, you know what's hit the fan and I'm running through a field."
Yeah.
But if the police officer doesn't know anything about that, then, you know, I can see why he thinks this guy just ran out of gas and he's walking somewhere. After Kyle and the deputy finished talking, Kyle decided to drive away and park up the road to see if Brandon would come out after the deputy left. He waited 30 to 45 minutes and left for San Angelo because his son was hungry and crying. Kyle wasn't able to fill the gas can because his check hadn't hit his bank account, so he left it in the bed of Brandon's truck in case he came back and decided to walk to a gas station. Meanwhile, LaDessa Lofton woke up around 4 a.m. and saw multiple missed calls from Kyle, Brandon, and Brandon's mom. She tried to call Brandon back, but he didn't answer. She spoke to Kyle, who told her they found the truck, but not Brandon. Kyle went back to the truck around 5 a.m., thinking that surely Brandon would have returned by then. He walked around and shouted Brandon's name, but received no response. At 7 a.m., Kyle put gas in Brandon's truck and left the area. He shouted for Brandon again, but heard no response. Coke County towed Brandon's truck shortly after 8 a.m. on August 9th because his vehicle was over the white line. So, I mean, first of all, this is a pretty good brother.
Sure he is.
I mean, he's been out there multiple times.
Yeah.
All throughout the night and early morning, and eventually does get gas and, you know, puts it in his truck.
So we just don't know what happened from the time that Brandon said, "Hey, I see you with that police officer." From that moment on, we don't know what happened.
No, because nobody talked to him, right? The calls started going to voicemail. His brother Kyle shouted out to him multiple times, and you know, there was no police there at that point. So you would think if Brandon was there, he would have come out, but he never did.
Yeah. And if you were being chased down, if you were in some type of distress situation, I don't know. I feel like I would have came out, even with the police officer there thinking, well, that's my better opportunity.
Well, if you thought your life was in danger, because let's face it, that warrant's not going anywhere.
Right.
It's not going away.
It's going to hang out there.
It's going to hang over your head. And, so if you thought your life was in danger, yeah, maybe you do come out. The following day, Chief Deputy Brandon Neal checked the properties of owners who were away from home for the season. He was looking to see if anything had been disturbed, but found nothing. Later that day, he checked the same area with a thermal imaging camera, but didn't register a human-sized heat signature. Okay, some pretty advanced technology. I like when they do it from the helicopter.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And they can see somebody like laying down in grass or something, or in the bed of a vehicle, underneath the vehicle. That stuff's pretty cool.
It is. I think we should have one.
Yeah, I don't know what we would use it for, but
just to have it.
Okay. But, as we go through this case, Gibbs, it's very easy to see why people are so intrigued by it. There's a great deal of mystery here.
There is. Just because things don't add up.
No, the 911 call is all over the place. What does it even mean? What does this stuff mean about, Ledessa has people after me? These other guys are after me. And I keep going back to this question of, was somebody really after Brandon Lawson? Or, was he high on something and was thinking someone was after him, but no one really was?
It's a strong possibility, right? Paranoia.
On August 11th, the private search team gathered at 8 a.m. and ended their search around noon. The report stated, per the San Angelo Standard-Times, the only sign of anyone being in that area was a spot under a tree where it appeared someone sat down close to the roadway within eyesight of where Lawson's pickup broke down. So that could have been maybe where Brandon was when he said that he could see his brother Kyle, but he didn't, want to come out because the police were there. Texas Ranger Dwayne Gall met with Coke County authorities on August 12th. They all concluded that Brandon was possibly no longer in Coke County. Ledessa Lofton reported Brandon missing on August 13th. That same day, former Texas Ranger Nick Hanna came to Coke County to take a helicopter ride over both sides of US 277 near the area where the truck was found. According to a report written by Chief Deputy Brandon Neal, it was determined that Lawson was not on the ground due to the fact that there was a lot of exposed bare ground, even under the short mesquite and cedar bushes. The report concluded Brandon Lawson is not in Coke County, lost or hiding. Now, that's a tough statement to make. I don't know how big Coke County is, but I'm thinking about, some of the counties around where we live.
Right.
It's pretty good sizes. There's a lot of areas to check. Pretty hard with just a helicopter ride to say that this person's not in the county. Now, this might be, and I think is much more remote than where we live.
Still, I think it's a difficult thing to say
with any type of assurance.
Yeah.
Right? How can you definitively say that? Kind of tough. This opinion was based on Kyle's revelation that Brandon was hiding in the brush near his truck to avoid being found by the deputy. Other factors included the lack of evidence of foul play and the text between Brandon and Ledessa detailing the severity of their fight. Chief Deputy Neal believed that after he and Kyle left the truck, Lawson walked back to the roadway and was able to get a ride from a passing motorist. Neal further explained to the San Angelo Standard-Times that during the helicopter search, they could see corn sacks. He said, if you can see those from the plane, you can see someone laying down. At that time, the drought was bad. Leaves were drying up and everything. If someone wants to be gone, they can't. Okay. So he's pretty confident that, by helicopter, they scoured this county and they didn't find anyone.
I mean, if they feel that strong about it, you hope that they, did a full search.
Well, they couldn't have done a full search. They did an aerial search.
Yeah.
But again, I don't know how many buildings there are in this area. I don't know what all's there. I mean, obviously their theory is that this guy was not walking around Coke County. He most likely walked back to the road and hitched a ride. Neil noted that Brandon had an active warrant, which could be a contributing factor for why he is gone. And you do have to take that into account. You know, that warrant for possession with intent to distribute, that's no small thing.
No, it's not.
So, you know, does that factor in to him either going missing because someone didn't want him to get caught? Maybe he knew something against someone else, you know, that he might have told, or he wanted to get away so that he didn't get caught himself.
Yeah.
I think you have to look at a bunch of different scenarios like that have to do with the warrant. However, according to Brandon's family, former Texas Ranger Nick Hanna thought Brandon's body was somewhere off US 277. Large portions of this area are desolate terrain with thorny mesquite and cactus. It's an environment inhabited by rattlesnakes and feral hogs.
Well, look, you know, if you're running through these fields at nighttime, you're not going to see everything. But if you're running through these fields and come across a rattlesnake, guess what? You get bit.
You're in big trouble.
Yeah. Especially if your phone's not working, you're going to die.
And then maybe you get eat up by a feral hog.
Well, that's a possibility too. You never know. But you could fall down and, you know, be underneath one of these cactuses or one of these mesquite.
I think it's cacti.
Cacti, cactus.
I think the plural of cactus is cacti, isn't it?
I think you're right, but it could be two cacti side by side. Now you have cactuses.
I could be wrong too. I don't know. But, you know, I do want to go back to this thermal imaging type of search. You know, obviously, if the person's dead, there's not going to be a heat signature.
No. So that's not going to be helpful.
Right. They wouldn't have picked him up that way, but, you know, they did an aerial search as well. They're saying they didn't see any bodies, but could they have missed one? I don't know. There are three main theories about what happened to Brandon: that he disappeared willingly, that he died as a result of foul play, or that he succumbed to the elements. And, you know, let's face it, in a lot of unsolved disappearances, you could say that those three theories apply to many of them. Brandon cashed out his 401k with Renegade Oil Services shortly before he went missing. He was supposed to start a new job the Monday after his disappearance. LaDessa Lofton was aware Brandon was in the process of cashing out his 401k, but she didn't know if he ever got the money. His last check was direct deposited into his account on August 9, 2013, but was never withdrawn. It later went to the state to cover child support. So, you know, what do we often talk about? If someone is going to disappear willingly, most of the time, you would think they would want as much cash as they could get their hands on.
Absolutely, they would.
Now, did he get his hands on this 401k money? I'm surprised that there's nothing in the research about a record of it, because you cash out your 401k, they're not handing you a wad of cash.
No.
Most people have their 401k transferred to a new one at their new job if there is a 401k offered.
Right.
If not, then okay, they're going to cut you a check.
Yeah, then you're deposited. So.
Yeah, they're not giving you cash. So it doesn't sound to me as though Brandon had like a large sum of money with which to go on the run. But when you look at some of the factors possibly supporting this theory, you have the fight with LaDessa and you have the active warrant. Now, to me, the fact that he had a new job that he was supposed to start the following Monday,
yeah,
kind of goes against that theory.
I think so too.
Why would you even, you know, get that far down that path if your plan was to, you know, take off and run? Several months after Brandon disappeared, Kyle met with Texas Ranger Nick Hanna, Coke County Sheriff Wayne McCutcheon, and an investigator from Johnson County, where Brandon had the warrant. They asked Kyle whether he harmed his brother or gave him a ride out of town. Kyle eventually asked to take a polygraph. He told the San Angelo Standard-Times, "They said I passed the one on harming and tried to say the first one was faulty because I had coughed a few times during the test." Brandon's father, Brad Lawson, told the Standard-Times he goes back and forth on what he believes happened to Brandon. He accepts that it's unlikely Brandon is still alive and has had nightmares about what might have happened to him. So here's a couple of things here. It sounds like they suspected Kyle.
It did.
Had a role in either one, harming Brandon or giving him a ride out of town.
Yeah, you helped your brother out to flee the warrant.
Now, to me, as much as I don't really care about polygraphs, the fact that someone would ask to take one usually bodes well in their favor, because most people decline to take one if they have any doubts about their guilt at all.
No, I agree with you. I mean, he volunteered to do the lie detector test. Who in the right mind would do that if they're guilty?
Right. If they thought even for a second they were going to fail, you're just opening yourself up. The Lawson family is considered that someone might have been following Brandon, that he walked onto someone's property and was killed there, or that someone passing through committed a crime of opportunity. Brad Lawson said something bad happened that night, and it wasn't him meeting a girl and driving off somewhere. So, that's interesting. His dad does not believe that he just up and left. He's fully convinced that, at least I'm taking it as though he believes there was some type of foul play. Now, what that foul play was or who it was committed by, he doesn't know. But I keep going back to this, people are chasing me.
Right.
LaDessa has someone who's after me. What is all that? That's very strange when somebody then goes missing.
Well, and for me, it's even more strange when you say all that stuff, but then right before you disappear, you tell your brother, "Hey, I can see you. You're right there." Well, if you were being chased and had that concern, like I said earlier, why wouldn't you just step forward and walk up to where your brother is?
Or do it after the deputy left.
Yeah.
If that was your big hang up. But if you're able to sit there on the phone saying, "I can see you," how much are you really being chased?
I don't think you're being chased, really.
At that point. Brad Lawson also said that the warrant wouldn't have been enough motivation for Brandon to leave because Brandon had already done some state jail time and he wasn't afraid to take the punishment that was dealt to him. He said, "No, I don't believe that. Not for a minute. It took a lot more than that to scare Brandon." Brad added, Brandon went up missing in the dead of night. How far could he have actually gone in that terrain? How far could a man have gone in a pair of shorts without any water or anything to drink? Brad said that Brandon was making plans for his future and his new job offered better pay and benefits. So, here again, he does not believe that Brandon just up and left.
Yeah, I think you're out there in shorts and going through rattlesnake-infested fields.
Apparently with feral hogs.
With feral hogs running around. I just wonder if that had something to do with it.
Kyle Lawson noted that Brandon's wallet, keys, and phone had not been found. Kyle said, "My brother might have been a felon and might have messed with drugs and he might have relapsed. My brother worked for what he had. He loved his children. He took care of his children. He was a good person. He wasn't some dope fiend living on the streets, robbing people, or trying to get over on someone to get high again."
I was also thinking about the 911 call where someone maybe was chasing him, but could it have been the feral hogs?
Could have been.
And that's the noise we hear?
It absolutely could have been. I don't know. I'm not very familiar with feral hogs. We don't have those here where you and I live. But again, I go back to, why this case is so fascinating to many people, the 911 call, the things that Brandon has told people, the fact that he was possibly, using again, or he was using again, but he could have been high that night. How does it all factor in? LaDessa Lofton also does not believe Brandon's death was an accident based on his 911 call. There were 4 searches for Brandon in August 2013, one in September, one in October, one in January 2014, one in February 2014, and the last in July 2014. Law enforcement has received multiple leads of possible sightings. So, that's a lot of different searches. Now, where they're searching, I don't know, but it's based on these possible sightings of Brandon. The family started working with PI Paula Boudreau. She tracked down leads, most of which came from the Help Find Brandon Lawson Facebook page. Some landowners wouldn't allow her or the family on their property, but apparently the police had already cleared that land. In 4 separate searches with dogs, she was able to clear land west of US 277. Boudreau also flew over private land where owners wouldn't allow her to search. By 2018, Brandon's case was cold.
I was thinking about how some of the landowners wouldn't allow searches to occur on their property, and we've heard that in other cases in Texas before.
Yeah, some people are very private.
Yes.
Or very staunch and not wanting, people on their land.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean they had anything to do with it.
No, just means they don't want people searching it.
They could have other stuff going on that they don't want law enforcement to find. Chief Deputy Brandon Neal told the San Angelo Standard-Times, "We don't have any leads. We have nothing. In recent years, there have been significant updates in the case provided by the Help Find Brandon Lawson Facebook. On February 4th, 2022, the page posted that Brandon's presumed remains had been found. It read, "It's with a heavy heart and great difficulty that we have an important update regarding Brandon's case. Our family's long-awaited journey to find answers draw near. For years, we have gone to great lengths to search the area of Brandon's last known whereabouts. Many searches have been conducted in various ways to locate any potential clues. We've had a circle of supporters assisting us in locating Brandon throughout this process. Recently, one of those advocates led a small search party in the vicinity of Brandon's last known location. The search team came upon some clothing that were consistent with Brandon's clothing. Authorities and local law enforcement were contacted and were able to take the evidence in for testing. The Texas Rangers conducted a search that ultimately led them to discover human remains in the same area. Although DNA tests are needed to confirm identification, it's in our hearts that we know that it is Brandon." In March 2024, the family posted that they were given permission to return to the area to attempt to find Brandon's keys, wallet, phone, or additional human remains. On June 11th of this year, the family posted the following update. "Good morning, community. We would like to share with you the latest update on the DNA analysis of the remains found in February of 22. We have received the preliminary test results of that analysis. The lab is currently rerunning the tests to confirm the analysis so that there will be little margin for error and all ducks will be in a row. We will update everyone as soon as we hear from the ranger in charge of Brandon's case. In the meantime, law enforcement, as well as both of our private investigators, continue to investigate any and all tips, information that comes to us. Brandon's absence continues to be felt every day by his loved ones and friends. We know that God will continue to love and comfort those closest to Brandon. We appreciate all prayers and well wishes. Thank you all for your love and support." In August of this year, the family posted to mark 11 years since Brandon went missing and wrote that they were still waiting for DNA results.
It's a long process.
It is, because, this goes back to 2022. It's hard to believe that in this day and age, it takes that long. to do DNA testing? Well, we know it doesn't take that long. So I'm not sure what is taking so long.
What's the holdup?
What is the holdup? It sounds like the lab had already tested them and then they were going to retest them. It's just strange that the results have not come out.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like the family feels pretty confident
that it's Brandon's remains. Yeah, I think they are based on the clothing, but I'm just shocked that in 2 years, a little more than 2 years, I think, they haven't been able to answer that question.
Right.
That's tough to believe. But even if the remains are identified as Brandon Lawson in the coming months, there's still going to be a lot of questions about what happened to him that night and how he died. If the remains are Brandon's, authorities will have to determine whether or not there was foul play. So, determining whether the remains are Brandon's, that's one thing.
Right.
That will answer one question. Is he alive or not?
Exactly.
But I don't know if it's really going to be able to answer other questions.
How?
Well, what are the state of the remains?
Yes. That's a big that's a big piece of the puzzle.
Well, it can't be more than skeletal remains. It's been
too
long. But, would there be evidence of a gunshot, a knife wound? Could there be evidence of something like that? If he died from a rattlesnake bite, or if he died from dehydration or, something like that, I think it's going to be really hard to tell.
I think so too.
So that's why I'm not sure that many of the questions are going to be answered.
Well, first things first, let's hope that they identify the remains.
And then go from there. Hopefully some information comes out. But again, it's why so many people are captivated by this case. I think first and foremost, anytime you've got a strange 911 call, that really draws people in because you're hearing from the person who disappeared.
Right.
And this one's very strange. The things that he says on the call are strange. Then you have all of those calls that we listed, to his brother, to neighbors, to Ledessa, and back and forth. Why was he cutting off so often with his brother? Was it because of poor reception? Was it because of something else? And then there's this whole idea of him being clean for like 6 months, possibly relapsing, or not possibly. I mean, people said he did. So was he on something that night that was causing him to act differently than he would have if he was sober? And did that lead maybe to him acting in a way that caused his death? Or I go back to this, possession charge with intent to distribute. Maybe there were some other people involved that weren't happy with him.
Yeah, could have been.
And maybe there was foul play. I don't know. There's too many questions unanswered right now.
Well, we have a lot of possibilities, but until we get the body identified, I guess we just have to wait for that.
Well, there's a chance that he's not dead. There is a chance that he just blew town.
Possibility.
Now, nobody thinks that, right? His dad doesn't believe that. His brother, his family. I don't think Ledessa believes that. But the possibility exists, however remote it might be. But yeah, you're right. We're just going to have to wait and see what plays out on this one. That's it for our episode on the disappearance of Brandon Lawson. We got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
I love the show. I've listened to every episode on PCAT and Unsolved, and I only have one question. Would Gibby like to have an affair?
Yes, he would. I thought that was such a funny voicemail that I had to play it. I don't think your girlfriend would
be okay with that.
No,
I don't think she would either.
But I'll answer for you. But I just thought it was funny. I got a kick out of it.
That's funny.
Hello, my name is Callie from Indianapolis, Indiana. I called and suggested the Delphi case to you guys a couple weeks ago. I'm calling in with another case suggestion. I just listened to this case, and it blew my mind. It's doesn't have a name or anything, it's not very infamous, but their names are Stephen and Carol Baxter. By far the craziest case I have ever heard. I went into a big rabbit hole, and it's just twist and turn after twist and turn. It's crazy. It kept me on my toes, and when the killer was revealed, it blew my mind. But I hope you guys have a great day and keep your own time cooking. Thank you.
I probably should have put that on TCAT, but I put one on TCAT. I probably should have put it on Unsolved.
Yeah, you do that now and then.
I do that now and then, but we'll check it out.
It sounds interesting.
We love anything with twists and turns.
Absolutely, we do.
And twists and turns.
And rabbit holes.
And rabbit holes, for sure. All right, that is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Did you know you can watch all your favorite crime shows for free on Pluto TV?
Totally free?
Totally free. They've got CSI New York, NCIS, Criminal Minds, Blue Bloods, Tracker, FBI, SWAT, all for free.
There's something suspicious going on here.
Nothing suspicious. Just hundreds of free crime shows. On Pluto TV, crime never pays, and neither do I.
Pluto TV.
Stream now, pay never.